Good morning, everyone. If you can find your seats, we're at the 10 o'clock hour, and we'll get things started. Thank you for coming to the January Legislative Coffee. Just a reminder on Craig and Steve's and Jason's schedule. We are always the third week of the month. So, and it's always at 10 a.m. In February, we'll be at the Farm Bureau office. They're going to host the Legislative Coffee. And then in March, we'll be at Milk and Honey, and they will host it. And then April, we always kind of just keep open, because we can always have a legislative coffee if there are still, issues on the floor that need to be discussed. But sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. So the way that we operate our legislative coffees is I give each of our representatives a chance to kind of just update us on what they're working on, things that they are hearing in their committees, and then we'll open it up to the general public for questions. Unfortunately, today we're down to one microphone. So when it comes to the questions, I may just have you stand up and talk, as the teachers like to say, talk with your teacher's voice. Just talk real loud. We'll see how it goes. So with that, I will turn it over to Jason, Steve, and Craig, and they'll give you some updates.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see a large, robust crowd here for our first one. Where I was worried the first time people aren't quite in the habit yet, and they might miss the introductory session. I'm Jason Schultz. I'm a farmer in Crawford County. I live in Schleswig. I am the state senator for the area, and I guess just in the way of introduction for those who haven't been here before, and sometimes you have some things change. I'm, again this year, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm on Commerce, State Government, Workforce, which used to be the old Labor Committee, and Ways and Means, which handles tax issues, such as the property tax. They added natural resources this year, and I'm interested. I haven't been on that in quite some time. So those issues, I'll be a little bit more cognizant of what bills are running and what's going to happen. So we started, I want to be careful so I don't take everything here, and everybody has some updates here. So we started Monday, and this week is an organizational week. We all get our committees organized just by procedure and start the process of taking the bills that didn't make it off the list last year. Some of them are still alive. They get referred back to committee. We decide if we want to try looking at those again or not. And then we always have a fresh raft of bills filed by people who came across issues during the interim. So we've been getting that done, getting subcommittees started. Not many have run, a few have, but this coming week that machine will really be in full speed. The issues this year, as I see them, the umbrella issue over all of it will be a tight budget. I'm always careful to take accountability, so I always refer to him as my president. President Trump passed the big, beautiful bill. We have coupled with federal law and federal changes, and it was so difficult to do, we're very reluctant to change that. And I support leaving money in people's hands anyway. But it's going to lead to a lower than expected revenue from the taxpayers of Iowa. We're going to make sure we don't spend more than we take in, and that we continue responsible budgeting. And there's going to be some issues there. Policy chairs have been warned and told that any policy that has a fiscal note, a dollar sign attached to it, needs to be brought to the appropriations system early so that they can see if it fits in. But we're going to be guided in the Senate, at least, and I know the House is going to be tight as well. But we're going to be guided by what can we afford and what can we not. Other than that, we have the pipeline issue. That brings a bunch of folks in. And then property tax will be one of the major headline creating issues. And we have property tax bills that have dropped, and we'll be comparing those throughout the year at forums, but daily down there in Des Moines. Most of that will happen, most of what you're going to see will happen after the second funnel in March when we move into spending and tax season. But we'll be working on details and comparing and just looking at the effect of different provisions of different bills. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on so we can move on to questions.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Craig Williams from Manning, Iowa. So I've got House District 11, so I cover all of Carroll County, all of Audubon County, and then all of the south and east portions of Shelby County, except for the northeast portion. That's Representative Holt's area. I'm on several committees, the local government. I'm the co-chair of the local government committee. I'm on environmental protection, the judiciary, transportation committee, and I'm on the ag appropriations subcommittee. And I have to write those down because sometimes I forget. The judiciary is the most fun. Representative Holt is the chair of that committee. And maybe I shouldn't say fun. It's the most active. We got a lot of stuff that comes through that, including the other day we did the eminent domain bill, and that was hard-hitting and fast, and I appreciate that from Representative Holt. Big issues for this year, eminent domain is definitely going to top. We want to get that in and through the Senate and on the governor's desk as quickly as possible, so if it ends up getting vetoed again, we can respond and react to that and try to get something covered. I'm one of the, I voted yes on the eminent domain bill. I don't have a problem with the pipeline, well, I do, but I'm going to stand in the way of the pipeline, but using eminent domain to take people's personal property for that project is not appropriate, and I've been consistent on that for the last 5 years, longer. Let's see, so things that I'm working on outside of that, I put in a bill for the ISU Vet Med School. We don't have enough kids coming through the Iowa State Veterinary School to stay in Iowa. There's a lot of out-of-state students that go back home, and we're short of vet med students here. So working on something with that. We're working in the judiciary on the revolving doors of allowing people who are put into jail to get right back out again. Not as big of a problem in this state as it is in other states, but we want to slow that process down a little bit. I think I'll leave it there. I do have, and I think all three of us have brought petitions, maybe not Representative Schultz, but the two representatives here have our petitions here. We have to have 50 signatures to be able to run. It doesn't mean that you support us or anything, but if you sign those, that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. It's great to be back with you. It's great to see a full house. I'm honored to sit here with Representative Williams and Senator Schultz, representing District 12. My name is Steve Holt. I live in Denison, Iowa. I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, a few years in law enforcement, was a small business owner until I got so busy in the legislature that I decided I'd rid myself of that. So these days, that's what I do. My wife's a school teacher in Denison, and we raised 5 kids. I'm chair of House Judiciary Committee. I'm also in public safety, oversight, higher education, and ways and means. The things I would tell you about that you're going to hear a lot about in the news this coming year. First of all, property taxes. You're going to hear that. Is it going in and out?
It is.
You're going to hear that the House has a bill, the Senate has a bill, and the governor has a bill. So that's just kind of how it works sometimes. The House and the governor's bill are very, very close together. I think I've heard the statistic of 75% of what we have in our bill is also the governor's bill. I think you're going to see a very serious effort to do something with property taxes. The fact of the matter is, on the state level, we are told by the Revenue Estimating Conference the amount of money that is available, and we make our budget accordingly. In some counties in Iowa, they just decide what they want to spend, and then they take the money accordingly. We need to flip that script because property taxpayers are not bottomless pits of money. And so we're going to do our best to flip that script, while also obviously counties and cities have to meet the needs of the community. Keeping Iowans safe, that's going to be going through the Judiciary Committee. I'm sorry this is going in and out. I don't know if it's a battery or what. So what we found is that we have a lot of minimum sentences in Iowa, but it's not enough. The county attorneys made me aware of an individual who was sentenced to 20 years in prison. They got out after 1 year. That's 1/20th of their sentence. We see what's going on in Minneapolis. We see what's going on in other parts of the country. It's not going to happen here. So we're going to, for those individuals who are not willing to be rehabilitated and are career criminals, we're going to lock them up, throw away the key. It's that simple, because that will make our community safer. Senator Schultz touched a little bit on the budget. The fact of the matter is we're doing exactly what we intended to do. We ended up with a huge surplus because of responsible budgeting and fiscal responsibility amongst Republicans. We ended up with several $1 billion in the taxpayer relief fund, which was created to put overages in so we could return it to the taxpayer. And we had a huge ending balance. And that's in addition to all the constitutionally required rainy day funds and all of those things being full. So anyone that says we're in a budget death spiral, which is a Democrat's new sort of ridiculous mantra, is totally not true. We purposefully did cut taxes to 3.8%, cut corporate taxes, did all of these things to return money to you. And we knew that as we grew out of that, we would draw down that surplus until the point where we were going again. We're already seeing the numbers that we're starting to grow again. So it's going exactly the way we intended it to go. So if you hear that we're in a budget death spiral, which I think is hilarious, that's simply not accurate. It's exactly the way we intended it to be. We're going to draw down that money because it's your money, and that is why we did it the way we did. We're going to do responsible budgeting in Iowa. We're going to have fiscally responsible budgets that respect taxpayers. When it comes to the issue of eminent domain, it's no secret that I believe, and most members of the Iowa House of Representatives believe, that it is not appropriate to use eminent domain for the CO2 pipeline because it is a public use project that does not fit the definition in our Constitution for the use of eminent domain. I do not oppose the pipeline being built. I oppose the use of eminent domain for the pipeline because it isn't appropriate. And economic development does not trump the Constitution, does not trump the constitutional rights of the people in my district or in the state of Iowa. So we passed 4 bills over the last several years that weren't taken up in the Senate. The one that was taken up in the Senate last year passed. The governor vetoed it. So we hit the ground running in an almost unprecedented fashion, because this doesn't happen very much. On day 2 of the legislative session, I held a subcommittee on eminent domain bill that simply says, to the heart of the matter, no eminent domain for CO2 pipelines in the state of Iowa, period. All of the governor's concerns on the last bill, which was much more comprehensive, are rendered mute by the fact that this very simply says, no eminent domain for CO2 pipelines in the state of Iowa. It's very similar to what South Dakota language. We held a subcommittee on it, advanced it out of subcommittee on Tuesday, and advanced it out of committee on Wednesday. And I would hope that would come to the floor very, very quickly, and we can go from there. I will mention the Senate does have a plan to expand the corridor, which would lessen the need for eminent domain, but the fact of the matter is it really doesn't protect property owners because eminent domain can still be used. And so they could expand the corridor, but they could still use eminent domain. That is not acceptable if you believe in the Constitution. It's just that simple. And so we'll continue to work through this, but that's where we're at, that's where I'm at, and I look forward to your questions. Let me just say this, I have a newsletter sign up there. If you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, which I put out every week during the session. I also have a constituent services form up here if you have something you're concerned about you need me to look into. And I also have petitions. If you're interested in signing my petition, you have to have, I thought it was 60 names, but maybe it's 50. Anyway, we have to have an X number of names in order to get on the ballot. And so that's what this petition is for. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you.
All right, so what we'll do is we'll open the floor to questions. We'll do our best to pass along the microphone. And so I ask you, because of the size of our group today, to keep your questions specific. Really please don't make a speech, just, ask your question. And we will try to get as much in as we can before the end of today's meeting. So with that, if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and I will pass the microphone along to Carol, and she'll bring it over to you.
Craig, you mentioned that on the vet school. Is that large and small animal? Because we do have a major problem on the large.
Yeah. I don't have a microphone here, but I don't know if you can pick it up without me on the microphone. Your camera, okay? Okay. No,
Yeah, so it's going to be specific to mixed animals, so large and small, yes. That a concern?
My choice in the future of treating an animal that's in pain or suffering, and I can't get a large animal vet there, is going to be a bullet. Because I will not see it suffer.
Okay, so what he just said was his choice of treating a large animal. If he can't get a large animal vet there, the answer is going to be a bullet because he's not going to let him suffer.
I'm not trying to be...
I totally understand exactly what you're talking about. We don't want animals to suffer. We need vet meds. I've been talking to veterinarians across the state, and they can't get new people coming in to be vet meds for mixed animal and large animal. In the cities, it's not that big of a deal or big of a problem, but out here rural, where we really need them, it's a problem. And I don't know that we have the answer to it, but we're going to try to push Iowa State to allow more Iowa kids. Thank you. He likes that. More Iowa kids into the school.
We got one in Denison right now. That didn't get it.
We got one in Denison right now that didn't get in. That was by our standards perfectly qualified. I know who that is. We've got another one that I'm quite aware of as well. They're using something they call the Casper test that keeps the kids out. The Casper test, you familiar with it?
No, I heard the question.
Okay, so if you look it up, I've actually done some of the, I pulled up the Casper test and did some of the questions and answers myself, but it's really strange. It's basically an empathy test, right? That if you don't have enough empathy, Iowa State University won't let you into vet med school. I don't know if a cow really cares if you're empathetic to their situation or not. They're sick, they need help. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I don't think I need that. And I'm not going to talk about eminent domain today because I was there Tuesday. I want to know about the property tax and the issue of the fact that they're saying, okay, we're going to freeze it for seniors. Well, it's too much anyway the last few years. And then put the value on the house at $350. So $350 10 years ago would have been exorbitant. I mean, it's like, wow, that's a lot. That's a big house. Now it's nothing. So who's going to determine that $350? Is that the county assessor? And if so, what's going to keep that person from raising the value on our house so they can make ends meet because they're going to be strapped too?
The Senate doesn't freeze, so I don't, that's not something.
All right, so the question was basically on freezing of taxes, property taxes for people over 65, and on homes that are valued under $350,000, and who's going to make that decision. Now, that was a proposal that the governor put out in her condition of the state address the other day. The Senate has another bill that dropped on the first day. And I've told you folks before that I read everything before I'll vote on it. I did read that bill thoroughly, but honestly, I got to get a decoder ring. It's complicated, and I sent that to Senator Dawson. I said, I don't have a decoder ring, buddy. You're going to have to help me figure this thing out. I don't remember anything about $350,000 in there, or the freezing. On the House side, we're talking about freezing it. I'll probably disappoint some folks here, but I'm not in favor of that. There's a lot of issues with freezing taxes for some and not for others. There are 3 cities in Iowa where 2/3 of the residents are over 65. You freeze the taxes for those 2/3, but don't do something with the spending, The other third gets to make up the difference and pay that, right? I'm 62, so this is gonna benefit me if I voted for it, right? In a couple of years, I'll be the beneficiary of this. Now, 10 years from now, am I likely to move if I've got frozen taxes on my property to a new house that doesn't have frozen taxes until I move in there? The longer it goes, the less likely I am to move, etc. There's a cajillion issues with freezing taxes for some and not for others. Additionally, now the governor also put out that she wants to put in a fund where people can save for young people, for first-time home buyers, but we are really squeezing young people out of the housing market altogether. I mean, the houses that we bought 30 years ago and what we can sell them for today is just dramatically different. If we want young people to stay in Iowa, we're going to have to do something there as well, and I'm not sure that freezing the taxes for some and not for others is going to be the answer.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to what Representative just said. I've spoken to so many people on fixed incomes that, you know, are making forced out of their home because they can't afford property taxes, and it's heartbreaking. But yet, to Senator, or to Representative Williams' point, I mean, you freeze those on one group, and somebody else is going to take that up, and that's very concerning because young people, you know, the American dream is out of reach for them, and so
He's holding it. Is there a battery? Is it the way you're holding it? If you hold it higher, maybe that battery.
let's try that. So I'm concerned that the American dream is getting out of reach for young people. So I don't know what the answers are going to end up being. I also know, I think the governor's proposal moves assessments from every 2 years to every 3 years, I believe. So that would also, you know, increase the time that you, and I think there's some discussion about freezing how much the assessments can go up year to year also, so that they can't have these exorbitant jumps. So there's a lot of discussions going on. Don't know where it's going to end because, as you hear just from this conversation, it's a really complex situation that we're trying to work through. But I hope that we're going to arrive at some good conclusions, and I hope that we're going to put some restrictions on where if the local municipalities or counties choose to go up above a certain percentage, they have to go before the voters for approval. So there's a lot of things in the pot. We'll just have to see what happens. So I hope that answers your question. It's complicated.
The question was about freezing, and the Senate version doesn't do a freeze, so I really don't have much to talk about there. I'm going to say right off the bat, this is the opening round, and we're just learning about this, so it isn't proper to say, well, who's right, who's wrong. We're actually trying to get our hands around this so we can see the implications. So I will explain the basics of the Senate property tax plan with Senator Dawson. And I will say that we had one of my favorite large Western Iowa constituent receptions on Tuesday, and we couldn't make it there. I was learning the property tax bill. Doesn't mean I've learned it. It means it was the first time I got a chance to hear the major provisions and how they work together. So the Senate bill operates under the basic idea of broadening the tax base and lower the taxes. And lower the tax, it's a property tax bill, so you're trying to ease the burden on property taxes. So I'll start with, because I think this is where people got hung up in the educational meetings I went. I'll start with the broadening the tax base. And I'm looking at all this, because some of this is not my normal way of thinking either. Number one, it would put an inflator on the gas tax. So there would be a percentage, and we're talking tiny. This year would be 6/10 of a penny if that formula was in place. But it increases the gas tax by a tiny percent every year. There's a break in there. It can't go up 3 years in a row. It has to take a year, and then it can reset. And what that would do is put an additional however many millions of dollars into the road use tax fund. 53% of that goes to counties and cities. And that is to try to shore up the secondary and farm to market county pavement funds. So that is so that it doesn't have to come from property taxes and the general, from the property tax silo. The idea there is that a lot of the folks using the roads and using them heavy are not are not property taxpayers. And that would be the major truckers, the manure haulers, just agriculture that's on the roads and they have tax exemptions for their farm use. And we're only talking road diesel here, not on, not dyed. So there's an additional revenue for counties there with a gas tax inflator. I did think, it looks to me like if we do that, that's going to bring in a lot more gas tax into Shelby and the other rural counties I represent than we are paying in additional tax. So I think the counties would benefit from that. The number 2 thing is item is local option sales tax, which is now a 1 penny. It would allow, by a vote of the people, that to go up 50% to 1.5 cents. And then that money would also go to the county for distribution. So there are 2 items that would broaden the tax base. And again, that is because a whole lot of property tax don't go to property services, they go to general population services. And we think it's a legitimate tax policy that everybody pitches in for what they use. Now the flip side of that then, where a lot of people get hung up, and I'm still looking at it, is a provision that if you are over 60 years old and don't have a mortgage, you own your property outright, the belief is that you should own it outright, and it would remove you from the property tax rolls for the primary dwelling and 1/2 acre around it. And that language is so that in town, your lot and your house, if you own it, you're over 60, is off the property tax rolls. And if you're on a farm, your primary dwelling, and essentially your yard, that 1/2 acre there, would be off the property tax rolls. I don't know yet, I can't stand here yet and argue that it is that it's a flush or a positive or a negative. I need to see more runs. I just want to make sure you know what we're talking about. The Senate bill also removes the rollback, which is complicated and in various ways that I still need to wrap my mind around it. It's been a problem in trying to address the property tax issue, and it's certainly not transparent. So it would remove the property tax, the rollback from the formula, and then just give a 50% on the dwelling, 50% automatic exemption on value. And that essentially is predictable. It's equal all the way across. And then there is a soft cap on the general basic fund of 2% growth, but that does not apply to the other funds that are health insurance toward wages. What's the other big one in there? Health insurance, lawsuits. There's another one in there. That category has been identified as something that's outside of local elected officials' control, and they would be able to be flexible on that the way they are now. It's the 2% soft cap is essentially on the general basic there. So that would be the basic provisions that I think most people will be talking about. It is a complicated bill. There's more to it, but I think those will be the headline grabbing and give you a general idea of the philosophy underneath it. Sherry, you raised your hand.
So, yeah, to clarify then, so are you targeting the farmers on that fuel tax?
No, dyed diesel would not be part of that.
Okay.
At the moment. At the moment. I don't want to get locked into that, but as of the educational meeting I went to, it was regular gas pump in number 2.
Okay.
And then we had a hand up way in the back.
Yeah, thank you.
I got my notes here, so I have to go through it very quick. So the Senate study bill 3001, and you guys want us to phase out the property taxes, the rollback. So if you're going to phase that, and then with your new structure, you're going to exempt half of the homestead value from the taxation. Is that the plan? And also put the limit and increase it that 2%. So with limit growth, with the plan of offset process and increase local sales taxes and gas taxes. So you're taking from one area, you're adding into another area. So to me, it's like, you know, the bill doesn't make sense to me.
Fair enough, I'll accept it. The idea of removing the exemptions goes along with, it's an offset of not taxing people who own their property. See, currently, and this is philosophical again, once you own your property, thank you. The philosophy behind it is once you own your property from the bank, no other liens or anything, you should own your property. You should not be in a situation where if you don't pay your taxes, it can be taken from you. The idea is it's freedom and ownership, and you are an entity who owns property that cannot be taken away from you unless you sell it. So there's offsets between not being taxed here. It is, not the simple version, the shifting, it is absolutely. I mean, it is. We're trying to apply what we think is a better tax philosophy of broadening the base to everybody who receives the services, and that would be fire, police, access to the library, parks, all of that. Applying some form of a different revenue stream to everybody who uses the service. But then at the same time, once you own your property, you can't lose it. We're removing that. We will, and I'm certainly, I thought on my way down, I am not standing here yet with my chin out saying that this is the right way to go. I'm learning about it. But I wanted you to know the provisions, and I do take the feedback.
So by doing that, I'm looking at the small communities like Harlan areas, it's just going to die out.
Wait for the microphone, I can't hear you, sorry. Maybe come up.
So there's local services and stuff that needed in the small town and small communities. By doing this and saying that homeowners should pay taxes, or take the rollback out, put the cap on property taxes, and also to, what will that prevent from people from moving out of the state of Iowa and go to other states where their homes are appreciated by? Because people, I mean, owning a property, to me, I look at it as a long-term investment. There's appreciation in that, it's investment that you have. So if you're going to limit the growth of that property, take the rollback out, and assess it as 100% value, assessed value, will prevent from the government to come back and say, you know what, your house is worth $300,000, there's no rollback, and your property tax is going to be based on that in the future.
Is that what you're proposing?
No, that's what I'm against.
That's not what the bill does. It's not what the bill does.
Because if you take a rollback, you're going to use 100% assessed value.
And then there's a straight 50% exemption on value.
Okay. And then you're going to limit the 2% growth.
The soft cap on the general basic.
Okay. So other states where the homes are appreciated, they don't have a cap. Well, my question is, why will you stay in a state where your property doesn't appreciate like other states in value?
Oh, that's completely not what happens. The free market and how much the government decides to take from you in property taxes are completely separate issues. Your house is on the market. You can sell it to whoever, to the highest willing bidder you want. We're trying to set a framework on how government values your property and based on that decides how much money they can take in property tax.
But if the government value that property, isn't that what you use for appraisals and stuff?
There's not a red-blooded American that counts on the government to tell them what's the market
There's
value.
a sales value in the property around the community, but if there's a cap of growth, and you're buying a house in the state of Iowa, and you know that the appreciation of the value and the tax value will be this much, isn't the taxed value and assessed value pretty much correlate to determine what's going on in your state?
No, market goes first. That would be the every 2-year assessment, reassessment of property. Government follows the market. That's why we have the issue of valuation now, where they used to be pretty moderately steady and trending up, and suddenly had to spike. That was the private sector deciding that they were worth more, The government follows every 2 years and tries to move valuations to market value. The government has nothing to do in setting the value. They react and say, this is what the market says it's worth. We're going to tax that valuation.
Based on the 2%. So,
Not based on 2%. 2% is completely separate.
Separate, yes, I know.
Saying that your general fund can't go beyond 2%. I think there's some mechanism in there. If people vote, or if there's a vote of the council, they can go above it, but it's got to be done publicly. And that part, I'm not sure. I've been through the educational meeting a few times. We hit different topics every time.
yeah, my fear is just take the rollback out and put a 50%, and then later on you turn around and say, okay, your house is assessed by this value now. You don't have a rollback. Things don't go the right direction. Take the 50% out. Now you're assessed 100%.
That could be done by any legislature in the world in the future. I mean, that we can't affect that. We're trying to set something that we believe will be so workable, so popular, and fair that nobody would want to touch it.
Are you going to increase the local sales tax?
That is spreading it out so that everybody getting the services that aren't property related. Everybody's pitching in. But you're right. I'll openly say it. It's a shift of burden to a wider population.
You would have to vote for that local option sales tax, by the way. It's not something the state's going to say, you're going to have an extra 1% sales tax in your county. You'd have to vote for that. That's the way I understand it.
Yeah, no, it is.
Thank you for the question.
Yes.
My question would be first directed to Mr. Foltz, Representative Foltz.
Yes.
And I would ask for feedback from the other representatives.
Can you hold the mic up a little bit?
Sure. This is my second of 3 coffees this morning, and I was encouraged at the second to ask questions. So I'm working on that. I don't know how well I would articulate this question. To Mr. Foltz. Micah. To Mr. Foltz, thank you. When you say hardened criminals be locked up and throw away the key, do you feel we have good safeguards in place to determine if those criminals are able to be rehabilitated or not?
Well, absolutely, I think we do. I think the Department of Corrections has a lot of data and different formulas and systems they use to determine whether someone's been rehabilitated or not, but the proof is in the pudding. So they let somebody out and they commit one crime after another, such as the individual, they cut the throat of the Ukrainian woman on a subway in Charlotte. He had a rap sheet. You could put all of our arms together. The rap sheet was longer than that. That individual should never have been out of prison. That individual should have been in prison for the rest of their lives. People demonstrate by their conduct that they are not interested in being rehabilitated. And for me, that is defined as how many times are we going to allow someone to commit violent crimes and be back on the street? How many times are we going to allow someone to rob people, to commit even petty theft, all of these things? It's not just going to be huge violent crimes. It's going to be a pattern of consistency of committing crimes, period. Those people should not be back on the street. The data shows that about 10% of the population creates 90% of the crime. So if those 10% are not willing to be rehabilitated, then they need to spend their life behind bars. And that will, in the long run, make our community safer. The data, I think, is very clear on that. So I hope that answers your question.
We're reliant on the statistics.
Well, we're reliant on looking at an individual's rap sheet and seeing that they've committed dozens of robberies or dozens of violent crimes, like the individual that murdered the Ukrainian woman. I think you can call it statistic, you can call it reality, you can call it facts. Those people should not be out of prison.
I haven't seen the final, I haven't seen any bill on this yet, but I recall that the conversation was about 3 strikes, right? And so, let's say somebody commits a violent crime, rapes a woman, goes to prison, comes back out, rapes another woman, goes to prison, comes back out, does it again. I don't have a whole lot of, here's where the empathy test comes in. I don't have empathy for that. That guy needs to go away.
I guess I would start with I've always liked this quote. I think it's accurate. Mercy for the guilty is cruelty to the victim. My priority goes to the victim and the folks who could be future victims before it goes to the offender. Steve, is it appropriate? I think it is, or I wouldn't ask on the microphone to relay what we learned at the county attorney's meeting. So Steve and I, as judiciary chairs, went to the biannual, every 6-month, county attorney meeting, statewide, down in Des Moines. And to shortcut it, we got to the end of the conversation, and the big frustration being expressed was how the county attorneys, law enforcement does all the work to get a conviction to protect their population where they live, and the system keeps turning them back, and they have to deal with them again. Now so that happens. But what was eye-opening for us was the current commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, Commissioner Baines, who has been almost every position in law enforcement and prosecution. I'll point out he's a state prosecutor, and he has been a federal district attorney prosecutor. He's now our most popular, well-liked, respected, and effective department commissioner. But he pointed out, he said the issue in just 1 or 2 sentences is when he was a federal prosecutor, due to truth in sentencing laws, in order to get 8 years in prison for an offender, he had to put together and convict on about 12 years worth of potential prison time. And then he figured the system would kick him out in 8 years. He said in Iowa, we didn't know this, I'm embarrassed, I didn't know, we've been judiciary chair, we didn't know this was the case. In Iowa, he had to put together 60 years of conviction to count on 8 years of jail time. That's a problem. And it comes from probably the person I respect the most in the law enforcement, prosecution, department heads. And all the county attorneys nodded their head and agreed, we need to do something. And I'm going to put the safety of the folks in this room in front, before the well-being and future life of a repeat offender, or even a first-time offender who really hurt somebody pretty bad. That's a choice, not a mistake. And since it's relevant to this conversation, before I left for down here, I was scanning through the news, and Governor Pritzker, Illinois, signed a bill, I think yesterday, or the day before, that actually puts in state law that law enforcement or the criminal justice system will actually seal the records of convicted violent felons, convicts. They list the crimes. But now Illinois is introducing a system to the country where they can hurt people, and the state law says you're going to seal that so it can't be used against them in the future. Well, we share a river border with Illinois. I mean, we wouldn't even have the information. And I'm guessing that's probably going to be a pattern in other blue states as the left grassroots carry this judicial justice reform across the country. That's not the direction Iowa's going if I have anything to do with it.
Exactly, and just imagine being a family of someone, you know, who you've lost due to a criminal's actions, and then that individual is given a prison sentence and they're let out in a fraction of that amount of time. It's not just about rehabilitation, in my view. It's also paying debt to society. It's paying debt to the family and to the victims of the individuals that that you assaulted or murdered or what have you. So, yeah, I mean, 100% believe that we have work to do in Iowa. We do have a lot of mandatory minimum sentences, but it's not working properly, and we got to fix it.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Sir.
No,
No,
just no, I have her first.
Okay. Thank you.
She's been waiting. Yeah, that's really complicated.
Kiss the mic.
This is mine.
Close.
My question is back on the property taxes. Sorry, that was a little deep. When you mentioned property ownership and then not having to pay the taxes on that, I'm like, oh, goody, that includes me. But doesn't that shift the burden again to people who can't pay off their mortgage? I mean, if I was we were a young couple moving into the state and I wanted to buy a home and I looked at that, I might look somewhere else if my property tax had to be X so that, Z over here didn't have to pay their taxes. And so how does that not be the same thing as you were talking about earlier about shifting these property taxes? And I guess that's my question.
And as I said, I'm just learning about the bill. I said before that yes, this is broadening and lowering, so that there are shifts involved. I won't run away from that. The idea, and I'm still, because I'm a little dubious on some of this too, yeah. But the idea is that by expanding the revenue coming into the county from other directions and placing the soft cap on the basic. The idea is that it will not move or raise taxes to the others.
So will that put something in place that says, we're not going to raise your property tax just because this person over here can afford to not have to own that property outright?
Provided that the framework works the way it is described to me. I'm going to put caveats on it because we're on week 1 and it just got introduced to me. The soft cap does that. You can't raise the revenue before, but I'm going to be looking at that.
Okay.
I think that's a legitimate question. Westphalia was brought up earlier. I think that's equal to Schleswig. I'm going to be looking at that.
Thank you.
But I appreciate the concern and the question. Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, man, you are hitting the crux of the challenge we have, which is like when we're trying to relieve, people on fixed income. If we freeze their taxes or whatever, you are shifting that burden somehow. So and young people are struggling to buy a home and meet the American dream. And homeowners insurance has also gone through the roof. I mean, because of all the disasters that have been and everything. So there's a lot of those pressures going on that are making homeownership so difficult, not only to buy, but for those currently owning their homes. And so that's the challenge we're facing.
Yeah, you hit exactly my concern on shifting that property tax. And, I know that there's a $350,000 cap that the governor put on. It was the first time I heard it. It was the same time that you guys heard that. Not everybody who's over 65 needs a cap on their property tax. I do think it's bad when we're telling people who are 80 years old and widowed and you're going to lose your house because you can't pay your property tax. That's not good either. We've got a lot of situations here. It's highly complex. The needs of Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, versus the needs of Audubon County, completely different animals. And I always pick on Audubon County because 5,500 people and their biggest item is roadstone, right? And I don't know if people in Lynn County and Cedar Rapids know what roadstone is, but that's what we have here. And when the price of roadstone goes up, it comes out of taxes. So you're hitting on exactly the issue. I don't like the idea of people being able to say, well, I can vote for this or this or this or put these people in to spend this kind of money. No skin off my nose, my taxes are frozen. That's an issue for me as well. The sales tax thing, it could work, but how much sales tax is brought in by Audubon County versus sales tax brought in by Polk County? And how can that get redistributed, et cetera? So there's an awful lot of strings here. Every time we pull on one, something else comes apart, right? So it's not easy. We are going to have to do some other looking at other sources of revenue. And I'm just going to throw one out here and see how you guys react. Anybody do any online gambling here? Nobody wants to admit it, okay. So if you go into a casino in Cedar Rapids or Council Bluffs, anywhere across the state of Iowa, you go into a casino, that casino is paying somewhere between 22 and 24% tax to the state of Iowa for that casino to exist. If you're doing the same thing online, that online casino is paying 6%, I believe, tax to the state of Iowa, and all of our money is going to a different state. So the people that are running the casinos, they have salaries, they have payroll, they're paying taxes, they've got property tax, they've got everything else going on, and we're shifting that to another place. So, if I said we're going to raise the the online casino tax to match what it is in state, I've already got hate mail on that. Don't touch my online gambling, and I don't know what the number is, but I heard that would bring in $150 million, something like that. And we're here, online gambling is going like this, right? So that number could keep growing. We do have an issue with what we call the RIF budget. A lot of that comes out of the casinos and stuff, and that's going down as people are going other places to gamble. Doesn't matter whether we like gambling or not, that's where money comes from and how we do things. And we're going to have to look at things like that. We're looking at hydrogen that's going in some other places around here. That's a potential place for us to raise some revenues, et cetera. So, okay, did you guys want to add anything?
I would just add to what Representative Williams just said. We don't tax online gambling is one of the lowest in the country. And I think it's unfair to our casinos that are here actually paying the taxes and employing people. So no Republican wants to raise taxes, right? That's the problem. But I think it makes a lot of sense to do it in this case.
No, actually, okay, Steve. Steve?
I guess I gotta ask first. I don't have a question, but of course my comments, I have some observations and information I just learned, and I want to know if it's all right if I share that with you guys. It's not a question. Okay. My name is Steve Kenkel. I'm former supervisor here in Shelby County, and I've dealt with eminent domain CO2 pipelines since day one, going on 5 years. What I just learned was Summit's been saying since day one that this pipeline is no different than a natural gas pipeline. Okay? Well, the Interstate Natural Gas Association for interstate pipelines, I just read a report they did on from 2008 to 2018 on 7,200 miles of interstate pipeline, just like the CO2 is interstate. Like I said, 7,200 miles. That's almost 3 times the miles of Summit's proposed pipeline. And the reason they did the report was because you know what their eminent domain that they had to use for that was? Interstate again. Less than 2%. They contribute the reason that is so low to something called core commitment to landowner negotiations. And it's centered around 3 aspects: respect, trust, and transparency. I don't know if any of you guys watched the IUB hearings, but to hear and see and witness landowners in tears, men and women, about how they were treated by Summit Carbon Solutions was appalling. And now we're dealt with phase 1 of their pipeline. They're asking for eminent domain between 20 and 25%, not 2. Phase 2, it's looking it could be 80 to 85%. I don't know what to say. This pipeline can be built without eminent domain. So here we have landowners who, over these last 5 years, and they're getting blamed for the high eminent domain, being kicked in the teeth, and now we're considering giving our property rights away? What are we doing here? I mean, states around us, Minnesota, South Dakota. I talked to a legislator that was involved with passing the eminent domain bill in South Dakota last year. And she said one of the main reasons that bill passed was because of what Summit did to Jared Bosley and took him to court. I mean, that's what Summit does. Everybody worries about lawsuits. I mean, I even heard you said it at the state level. You know how Summit, if somebody says no, you know what they do? They sue you. They've sued landowners, supervisors, and counties over 232 times. Who does that if you have a core principle of respect, trust, and transparency? That's what this should be about. So I'm going to close with, I want to thank Steve Holt. I want to thank Craig Williams for your active protection of property rights. One thing I've noticed in my 5 years at this, whether I'm talking to legislators in Iowa or South Dakota, I have not, or the governor of Iowa, I have not talked to one legislator that does not support property tax. Not property taxes, property rights. Not one. But you have to let them talk long enough, and then they'll start coming up with but, or excuses, or maybe for this, or maybe for that. It's our constitutional right. There's no exceptions. And Jason, I'm disappointed in your past thoughts of, you're one of those talking supporters. You're not an action protector. So I hope that can change, and shame on you.
I was wondering who in our judicial system appropriates the money for the public defenders every year, and how do they determine what that is? Because in the United States, we spend billions and billions of dollars for our public defenders. And like you mentioned a little bit ago, our judicial system has a revolving door with these repeat offenders. Well, every time they go back in, it not only costs our police money to go out and arrest them again, but now you get a public defender that gets paid again, and a judge. And it looks to me like it's just ching. We're just ringing the cash register each time. And who keeps an eye on them? I mean, who in the system is in charge of reining in our spending on our judicial system? Who appropriates the money, and how do they set that?
Sir, fair question. We do. That's all part of the appropriations process. Just like at the federal, the legislature controls the purse strings. So we have a judicial branch bill that funds the judicial branch, and we have line items for public defenders, and we talk to them. We also have, and it is separate. I thought there was the same thing, different name, but there's indigent defense, and a combination of our culture is kind of declining, and we're getting more petty and small violent crime, just happening. And inflation, we're holding so tight on that we're actually having a problem right now, trying to get lawyers. The problem we're running into, we're tight on that money, so we're watching it very closely. We've actually fallen behind now to the point where judges are required to dismiss cases against people who can't afford an attorney, because without competent counsel, they can't be convicted. So you're exactly right. The revolving door of out of jail, recommit, uses the dollars of the entire system again. But it's us that have held it so tight because we don't like spending that money over and over and over again. But we're at a point where we've almost starved it to the point where justice isn't being done. But it's the legislature is the short answer.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up because I'm tired of sitting. Great question. We have a state public defender's office that has attorneys that will represent individuals who can't afford an attorney. That is constitutionally required. So we can hold that budget to a certain point because we're constitutionally required to provide attorneys for those who cannot afford them, right? So you have that. Then you have a general shortage of lawyers across Iowa, particularly in rural Iowa. And that's nothing new. There's a shortage of workers just about everywhere. Any employer you talk to will tell you they can't find workers, all right? So that's another reason I think we can really overhaul our welfare system because able-bodied people need to get off their butts and go to work, right? So we've got a shortage across the board of people willing to work. In the case of attorneys, we have a shortage of attorneys in the state of Iowa. So we've got a shortage of attorneys. We've got the constitutional requirement to provide defense to those who can't afford it. And the state has, I'll just be honest, the state for a number of years is underpaid. We have been underpaying those attorneys. The state public defender's office doesn't have enough people to do it, so they go out and we get what's called contract attorneys. We hire attorneys to represent these individuals and the state pays them. We're not paying them enough, and so attorneys don't want to do it. So we have been steadily raising their pay. We have been steadily raising their pay for a number of years, and we're going to continue to do that. Senator Schultz and I have been having a good number of conversations about what we're going to do to solve this because it is a problem that we're going to have to put some serious attention to. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, let me add to it real quick. So Chief Justice Christensen's from Harlan. She's the head of the Supreme Court. She's the Chief Justice, and she did a presentation to us on Wednesday this week where she addressed that particular issue. But while she was talking, I started looking it up because I was just curious about such things. So indigent defense, the state of Iowa pays $78 an hour to an attorney for indigent defense, up to, I think it's $10 or 10 hours or something like that max. Wisconsin is $100 an hour, Illinois is $150, South Dakota is $122, Nebraska is $125, Minnesota is $120. So we are underpaying it for that. But for every dollar that we go up, it's another $1 million to the state of Iowa. I mean, it's a lot of money. And so we've been trying to hold it firm and provide the constitutionally required service at the same time. But I know exactly where you're going is we're paying for that, and then we got to pay to incarcerate them, we got to pay for the police I mean, all these things we're paying for because one person can't behave themselves. And it's disgusting, I think, so.
I have a question. You said earlier about not be the person if they don't want to be hacked. But my question, I was thinking about it. I've been living in Iowa for 20 years. Iowa haven't done it before in the past. So why does Iowa have a capital punishment for especially the person who was murdered? So why we have that in policy? I know a lot of people disagree, some people support that. I hear that a lot of people talk about different states. But I wonder, can something be done for tougher action for that? For a different type of crime, or people who have low crime, they should pay that. I know some people can't find a job after they get out of jail because they've done a crime. But there must be a way to pay back the victim, because the victim shouldn't have to pay for what the person done wrong. Like somebody raped a woman has to pay for the treatment to get the help. They should be paid for the treatment instead of victim have to finally get help. Because not everybody gets afforded to go get the counseling. You see what I mean? There must be a way to pay back. I don't know if anything can be done about it.
a lot of stuff there. So let me start out by saying that we have life in prison in Iowa, and it's truly life in prison. This is one thing we do really well. If you're sentenced to life in prison in Iowa, you're in prison for life in Iowa. There is no, like in some states, you get parole 10 years later, whatever. It doesn't happen in Iowa. If you have life in prison, you have life in prison. And that was sort of a compromise when Iowa got rid of the death penalty. So a few years ago, I was asked to run a bill that reestablished the death penalty in Iowa. And some of the things I found out made me kill the bill. First of all, it costs a lot more money to put somebody on death row than it does to keep them in prison for life. On average, it costs taxpayers about $500,000 to keep somebody in prison for life. It costs over $1.5 million on average to put somebody on death row because of all of the legal stuff and all of the appeals and just all of the things that go into the death penalty. The other thing is it's increasingly difficult to find the medications that are administered to when you do the death penalty. And the thing that disturbed me the most, I'll be completely honest with you, the thing that disturbed me the most is individuals that can afford high-powered attorneys rarely get the death penalty. Individuals that get the public defender more often than not, that don't have much money, they're the ones that get the death penalty. That is not a fair administration of justice from my perspective. And so those are the reasons at that time I did not advance the death penalty. Do I believe morally in the death penalty? I absolutely do. Do I believe that some people should get the death penalty? I absolutely do. But those are the concerns that I had, and until some of those things are addressed, I have a concern about bringing back the death penalty. Because again, we have real life sentences in Iowa. When you get a life sentence, you're there, period, that's it. And even, we have resisted. There have been people that come forward, oh, these people are rehabilitated, they've been in prison for 40 years, they're 75 years old, we need to have some system. Nope. If we're going to get rid of true life in prison, then I will support reestablishment of the death penalty. But we do have real life in prison, which is actually cheaper for the taxpayers of Iowa than having a death row. That's just the reality of it. So those are the things behind that issue. I think the other part of it was victim restitution. The problem we have victim restitution, we have orders of victim restitution, but how do you squeeze blood out of a turnip? I mean, when a person doesn't have the money, they don't have the money to give the victim restitution. What are we going to do? Have taxpayers pay that? I mean, there was a bill last year, I think, from Representative Thompson because there was a law enforcement officer killed. Restitution was ordered, but there's no money. The person had no money. So do taxpayers step in and then pay that victim restitution? So that's the challenges we have with that. When you order restitution, but the person doesn't have the money. So those are some of the challenges there that I would just highlight. But I think those are fantastic questions. But the other thing I will tell you about that concerns me, just from a moral perspective, okay? I met a gentleman from Texas who was brought up here as part of the Innocence Project, who spent almost 2 decades in prison for murdering his wife. Guess what? He didn't murder his wife. And when DNA technology advanced enough and they were able to test a tiny amount of blood, they realized we've had this guy in prison for 2 decades almost. They let him out, they gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and meanwhile the person who actually murdered his wife had murdered somebody else. Folks, when we put somebody to death, there is no turning back from that. If we find out we put the wrong person to death because of the advances in DNA technology, you can't reverse that. But if they're sitting in prison for life, you can. So those are I will just tell you some of the moral things that I have considered when I looked at the death penalty.
Since these two gentlemen are on the chairs of the judiciary committees in their respective houses, I'm just going to pass this one on to Jason.
I don't have anything to add. I think you covered it.
We covered it. All right.
Although I should say I am in favor of the death penalty. I recognize all of what you said. I understand that. I think the technology, now we have DNA. And once again, they made the choice to hurt somebody that badly. I think they can be invited to leave the planet.
All right, so we are running over time. So this will be the last question for this session. Again, we'll be together in February for the next session. And there are ways that you can reach out to our individual representatives through their offices, and they do a great job of responding to you. So, like I said, we're just kind of running over time now, so we'll go down to one last question.
Yeah, my question involves, everything we've talked about has kind of been aftermath. My question is the mental health and whether ADH children or dyslexic children are considered mental health. The state of, the headlines were government cuts millions of dollars for mental health. I think they reversed that, maybe. My question is it the parents, the schools, the state to help get these kids some help? I have a grandson. Took him a year and a half to get diagnosed with dyslexia in the state of Iowa. You know how much time you lose in grade school? We talk about everything that's happened afterwards, but we got to start down below. And that's my question.
Sir, could you holler again? I accept the information you give. Could you, in one sentence, what was your question?
Who's responsible? Is it the parents, the schools, the state to help get programs to get these kids tested? So when they put them in a school setting and you're in 4th grade and you can't read yet, there's no recourse. Except you go on out and then all of a sudden, that kid's a bad kid. He's in jail now because and they get bullied. They're going to get bullied whether they're in the whole school setting or in special ed. That's my problem.
That it opens so incredibly many facets. And in fact, I want to be careful because I can see where we can fall into a situation where we all start finger pointing. The state says the school should have done it. The school says we need funding for special ed with this. The feds are out of this. So I don't want to get into finger pointing. Dyslexia itself, I know we've had dyslexia programs presented in the Senate to identify. I don't want to point to the school, but it would seem to me that that would be a face-to-face diagnosis and determination, but accepting that they're going to say that we do or don't have the funds to do something like that. I think that one's going to be close to that should have been caught in the school, but I don't want to blame them as I don't know the situation that close. But you're 100% right. Dyslexia, as far as being outcast, bullied, and all that, things like that need to be identified so that they don't become an outsider from the group. And that goes along with home life, being able to function. I mean, so you want a good home. I don't know. Who's responsible for it? Well, the state and property taxpayers fund it, and the school is, I'm hopefully prepared to identify it. The presentation I was in for dyslexia offered that it would be more effective and less money in the long run to simply test everybody. And they actually gave us programs, simple tests. And I think we didn't, I don't know that we did anything because it's already available to be done.
When we were in grade schools, we had hearing and eye test. You
Yes.
can't learn if you can't see or hear, right?
I meant to mention eyeglasses. Yes, I agree. If you can't see the board, you can't participate. Agreed.
Yeah, I don't have a specific answer to your question, but let me just tell you what we do have in the state of Iowa. So the state of Iowa provides $8,000 per student that goes to schools, right? And that doesn't change depending on the level of impairment that the child has. But the students could, 12% of our kids, about 1 in 8 of our kids are on individual education programs, IEPs. And so there's 3 different levels of IEP, and I don't remember what they all are, but at the low level, which what we're talking about here, I think is where kids can be brought out of class and get special help with reading or certain things, and it's minor. The school gets, they count that child as 1.71 children, right? And so $8,000 times 1.71, so the local school gets that. And then there's another level, and then there's a high level of mental health impairment or physical impairment that requires a whole different thing. I think that's like is it like 2.35 times the 8,000? So we're talking about $20,000 a kid, something like that, that the state provides. Now, the state doesn't go in and say, this child is on IEP and that child isn't. It's a local decision that they have to get together and say, we see an issue here, here's what we need to do. That's not answering your question, but at the same time, that is what we do, and then it becomes a local decision after that. So, okay.
Yes, sir. And I'm pretty certain that over the last few years, we've passed several pieces of legislation related to dyslexia certifications for teachers and training for teachers. So that has been a big topic of conversation in the last few years. And we have passed several things to try to give additional training for teachers in identifying dyslexia and how to help those young people.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. This is a fantastic turnout. We really appreciate your wanting to get involved with our local politics. The next legislative coffee will be the 3rd Saturday of February. And again, that'll be at the Farm Bureau office on 6th Street, and that'll start at 10 a.m. Like I said, we have to kind of have a timing to what we do here. So I know there's a lot more questions that people would like to ask. So as I suggest, you just reach out to them through their offices. They're great at responding to the information that you ask. And if it's still a topic in February, then we'll try to get you on the mic. So again, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.